So the Rebbe is going to speak about, again, analyzing how we look, according to the Rambam, at our avodah in preparation for the Yom Noraim. There are two ways of looking at our avodah. One is in the way of increasing those type of schusim that can bring us the reward and bring us good life and so on. But another way is looking at it that Hashem gives us everything in a way of tzedakah. And we'll see the way the Rebbe sees it in the words of the Rambam. The way the Rambam divides his halacha into like two different parts, we're going to see it in the Rambam's words. Let's begin. Mitzvos in the Tzedakah, Mefureshes Parsha Seinu. The Mitzvos Esa is in our Parsha. Ki yibcha evyin goymer, loy sa'ames as levavicha goymer, pasoyach tiftach goymer, k'mesh kasva Rambam v'achinuch, that this is our Parsha, is the source for Mitzvah of Tzedakah. This is something that the Shalah says. The Shnei Luch Sabris said a rule that we have to have a kesher. There has to be a connection between the events that take place in that week and the parsha of the week. And the Rebbe uses this to the nth degree. Every single time, whenever you can connect the parsha, he always connects the parsha with the particular time of the year, whatever event is taking place, and so on.
Well, the Haftarah,
not the Haftarah. Here he's talking about the Parsha, or the Haftarah. Move on. Sheyesh shayches miyuchedes bein mitzvos tzedakah l'chodesh el sharei la'olam kodim parshas ra'ei besmichus l'rish chodesh el. Because either it's going to be b'Shabbos mevorchim ha'chodesh elul, oy kikvir shana zu tov shemem ches, and also the way it comes out this year. But Rosh Chodesh El, that Parshas Re'eh comes out Rosh Chodesh. So obviously, Rosh Chodesh is the Rosh, the head that includes in it the whole month of El. So therefore, Parshas Re'eh, with which either you bench the month of El, the entire month, or it's the head of the month of El, meaning it includes the entire month of El. So therefore, Parshas Re'eh has to do with the entire month of El. That is the very practical connection, and we're going to bring a proof from a Rambam and so on. So Elul is a time to add in tzedakah. The Rebbe is going to bring a proof from this from a Rambam in Hilchos Teshuvah. That from what we see in the Rambam in Hilchos Teshuvah, in Aseres Yemai Teshuvah, that in Aseres Yemai Teshuvah the Rambam brings down, you need to add in tzedakah. From this we're going to see also that when it comes to Elul, you have to add in a similar way. Now he quotes the Rambam. So therefore, you can't really say we know the reason why you have to blow shofar. Still in all, remez yesh boy. There's still a hint. Koloimar, what's the hint? It's a wake-up call. Uri yisheinim chulu veitivu darchechem. Therefore, what does the person have to do because he's becoming nisoider now? Tzarech kol adam sheyira atzmei chulu chetzi zaki chulu, and therefore he realizes asa mitzvah achas. So if he's half and half, so you do one mitzvah, because he has to see not just himself as half and half, but he has to see the entire world as half and half. The Garam loy to himself and also v'lohem to the whole world. So then the Rambam goes on to say, Nohagu kol beis Yisrael laharbois b'tzedakah u'maisim toivim velasik b'mitzvos me Rosh Hashanah v'ad Yom Kippurim yeser mikol Hashanah. That's part one of the instructions of the Rambam for Aseres Yemai Teshuvah. Part two, and the Rebbe is going to focus on this, that the Rambam divided into two parts. V'nohagu kulam lakum balayla ba'asar yamim elu v'lispalu batnesias b'divrei tachnunim v'kibushim ad sheyara yoyim. In other words, slichas, to say slichas by getting up when it's still night, and to say slichas during the 10 days during Aseres Yemai Teshuvah. But the main thing that the Rebbe is going to point out over here, and he's going to base this all on, is the way the Rambam divides it into two things. But before he gets into dividing into two things, look back to the previous paragraph. It says, Tzedakah is Maisim Tovim. Tzedakah is part of mitzvahs. Why does the Rambam pull that out as a separate thing? Laharbis b'tzedakah and b'maisim tovim of mitzvahs. Not only did he point it out something separately, but sheikdimay l'shar ha'inyonim muchach ta'afal pisha b'yam meilu tzarech liyas ha'ischaskos b'chol inyoni Torah mitzvahs hine l'chay l'roish. That's why it's first in the list. Tzrichim laharbis b'tzedakah. So that is what the Rambam talks about Aseres Yemai Teshuvah. The Rebbe wants to apply this concerning the month of Elul. So he's going to give 3 points of why this reasoning applies in the month of Elul. Also, this ribui b'tzedakah, this increase in tzedakah in the month of Elul. In what ways is it like Aseres Yemai Teshuvah? One way is Aleph, Elul hu chodesh HaTeshuvah. That's what's brought down both in Poskim and also from the Arizal and also in the Alter Rebbe. But Dugmas Aseres Yemai Teshuvah. So one of the names is called Chodesh HaRachmim, it's called Chodesh HaTeshuvah, Chodesh HaCheshvan, the time of Cheshvan HaNefesh. But we see Elul is called the month of Teshuvah. So whatever applies on Aseres Yemai Teshuvah should apply in the month of Elul as well. Beis. Also, another reason why what applies in Aseres Yemai Teshuvah should apply in Elul. Why is it a preparation for the Chesima? Why? A tzaddik is immediately on Rosh Hashanah signed for good. But if he's halfway, so then he's left hanging until Yom Kippur to see which way he'll go. So on Aseres Yemai Teshuvah, you add more and more mitzvahs, so you should be able to be, off the fence. You should be roiv mitzvahs. So just like the Aseres Yemai Teshuvah is a preparation for Yom Kippur, kol chodesh Elul hu achana l'ksiva tchilas adin de Rosh Hashanah. And the third reason why Elul is like Aseres Yemai Teshuvah, v'yiseirem ezu, kol mem yoim, m'rosh chodesh Elul ad achre Yom Kippurim, hem hemshech v'chefza achas shel Yemai Teshuvah. Usually we say Aseres Yemai Teshuvah, but we're going to bring from the Bach that the entire 40 days is days of Teshuvah. Kimavur b'Bach, mikra ani ledoidi v'doidi li Rosh Tevis Elul, v'soife Tevis oilam mem, Yud. There's 4 Yuds. Ani ledoidi v'doidi li has 4 Yuds, so that's 40. Keneged mem yoim Rosh Chodesh Elul v'yod Yom Kippurim, kim be'elu mem yoim Yemei Yom HaTeshuvah mekubelas, doidoi karev lekabel Teshuvah ma'ava. So again, it's all times of Teshuvah, starting from Rosh Chodesh Elul. The mezeh muvan shal derech shebaseres Yemai Teshuvah yeshna inim yuchad laharbes b'tzedakah kach gam b'chodesh Elul shereishis ha'ischaskos b'inyanei Torah mitzvah shebechodesh zeh. Even though Chodesh Elul is a time when you should generally strengthen yourself in mitzvahs, but the first thing, the main thing is tzarich liyas bin tzedakah laharbes b'tzedakah. Yesh loimash there's a nirmas gamkin b'zeh Shatziruf T'Shem Havaya Shemeir B'Chodesh El Yotzei M'Sefer Tevis Shel V'Tzedakah Tia Lanu Ki. There is a concept that's brought on in Kabbalah that there are different ways of spelling out the name Yud Kei Vav Kei, and every month has a different type of combination, and it has to do with different psukim, with different words. So it's brought down in Kabbalah that the Soifei Tevis of the word, of the pasuk, V'Tzedakah Tia Lanu Ki, has in it Yud Kei Vav Kei. But again, it's a tziruf, so it's not the right order. So what do we see, Al Kapanim? That the month of Elul has a pasuk associated with it that has to do with tzedakah.
So this pasuk is in we're in
this is a pasuk in Vaschanon.
It says in Elul.
It doesn't say it about Elul. But Kabbalah says that the tzir of Shem Yud Kei Vav Kei has to do with Mother of El comes out of this pasuk. Yesh lahavin, but meshayin mitzvah tzedakah mishar kol in yonei Torah mitzvahs shalachein ha'is chaskus b'chodesh Elul v'aseres Yemai Teshuvah binyan tzedakah dafke. What's so special about tzedakah? So first of all, you could say a very simple thing. Why tzedakah is special, more so than any other mitzvah. L'churi yesh loymar shezel mishum shenesinus tzedakah mechaperes chet ukmeshakasa v'chatacha b'tzedakah proik, that when Nebuchadnezzar wanted to be advised by Daniel how he would be able to be saved, because Daniel told him about a certain bad dream that he would have to go into exile and whatever. So Daniel said that sins can be redeemed with tzedakah. How much the tzedakah is important for kaparas chatoim. Valpiza yesh levayir diakaloshin laharbois b'tzedakah. Why laharbois b'tzedakah? The lechura al pi halacha b'tzedakah yesh no shiur chiyuv hashava, something that everybody is applicable to. Meiser chaymesh 20% mitzvah mufcher. Aval lo yoyser mazek mishkas va Rambam kolam mefazer chulu ayifazer yoyser mechaymesh. But when does this apply? This applies only if you're doing it as a mitzvah, like any other mitzvah. So just like the mitzvah of esrog has a shear, the mitzvah of tefillin has a shear, so the mitzvah of tzedakah has a shear. But when it comes to tzedakah, not as just a mitzvah, but when it comes to tzedakah, to be able to redeem his nefesh from chet as a kapara, then there's no limits. Elosh kan kivin shakoy b'tzedakah shil pidyon on nefesh harei ein lachush mishum al yivazvus yoyser mechaymish the loy mikre bizbuz b'chiagavne ma'achar sha'oyser livdeis nafshei chulu. And just like the Alter Rebbe says, just like a person that needs to heal his body, he's not going to say, listen, I budgeted this year for my medical expenses X amount of money, and that's it. Chas v'shalom, something happened and the guy got sick and he needs to go beyond his budget. Nobody's stupid enough that's going to say, I'm sorry, it's not on my budget. This is how much I budgeted for the year. A person does anything to save their life. So the same thing the Alter Rebbe says. When it comes to save my soul, which is even more than my physical life, so for sure there's no budget, there's no limitations, there's no meiser or chaimish or limit. There's no limit to that. To just increase, to do a lot. That that's the reason why the Rambam over here points out tzedakah more so than other mitzvahs. Rambam mefarat haminig laharbais b'tzedakah u'maisim toivim v'lasik v'mitzvahs. He does it as part of a combination. He says, when it comes now, this time of year, he was talking about Aseres Yemai Teshuvah, so you got to add in tzedakah and maisim toivim and lasik v'mitzvahs. V'loy nira loy mar sheyesh kan shnei inyanim shoynim ribuy tzedakah b'tor chelik v'maisa teshuvah. That's one thing. You have to add more tzedakah because of teshuvah, because you got to take care of your soul. The ribuy maisim toivim and mitzvahs kedei la'achriya mozne adin l'kaf schus, like we said before, that since he's like, everybody has to look at themselves like they're halfway, they're a beinani, so they got to do more mitzvahs and maisim toivim to tilt the scale. So each one is separate. Tzedakah is for one reason, and mitzvahs and maisim toivim is for a different reason. It doesn't make sense, since the Rambam puts it together, to say that one half of the sentence is for this, and the other half of the sentence is for that. U'mistaber she'eina mevayer kan ella ba'achros mozne adim l'kav schus. He's only talking about that side of being machriel kav schus. V'shekam ba'oisi asuk the maisim toivim ve'eskam mitzvahs shekavanose la'achriya amaznayim l'kav schus yesh hadgosho mayla b'riba tzedakah. Even when he's doing it just for that reason, to be able to have more mitzvahs, even to have more mitzvahs, you still point out tzedakah as being the first thing you want to choose. Shekasav oidus minig haribui betfila v'tachnunim balayla b'baba fnei atzmai. Like I mentioned before, it's two separate sections in the same halacha. V'nogu kulam lokum balayla v'chulam. After saying v'nogu kol beis Yisrael lahar beis b'tzedakah ma'asim tovim v'lask b'mitzvos, then he says v'nogu kulam to get up and to say slichas. The lechura havalei l'meimer v'vava achas lahar beis b'tzedakah v'chulu v'lokum balayla. This is just one of the many things you got to do in Aseres Yemai Teshuvah. He has a shopping list. Go through the shopping list and finish. Why divide it into two separate things? Yes, Shleimer abir bezem b'chlolus kabbalas tzarchei adam hakadosh baruch hu. Yeshnam shnei eifan. Ukediisa b'gemara ala pasuk. Shimu elai, abirei leiv. People that are very strong-hearted, very mighty in their minds. Harachaykim mitzdaka. So, in a simple sense, when you're looking at this pasuk, this looks like he's describing a negative thing, talking about people that are very hard-hearted. They're stingy. They're very far from giving tzedakah. The Medrash, but turns it around. Says, Kol ha'olam kuloi nizaynim b'tzedakah v'heim nizaynim b'zroya. Everybody else gets their parnasa because Hashem gives them tzedakah, but they take it by force. B'zroya means taking it by force. What does that mean? Aleph, Kol ha'olam mekabel tzorcheim hakadosh baruch hu rak b'torat tzedakah v'chesed Hashem. V'loi b'schus shebiyadam. Ki einam re'uyim mitzad ma'aseyim. That's everybody else. Then there's the pasuk is talking about over here tzadikim nizroinim bizroya. They take by force. They said sekumtmir, I'm owed b'schus shebiyadam. So how do you call them rechaykim b'tzedakah? Tzadikim are far away from tzedakah. Not rechaykim from tzedakah means that they don't do tzedakah. They don't need Hashem's tzedakah. Just like that pasuk shows that there's two types of people, so too the Rebbe is about to say that in avodas Hashem there's two types of avodas. One of them shows on what I got, what I earned, and one is totally because of Hashem's chesed. Avodas Hashem shnei efanim Elohim bechlolus behesem la'achiluk ben tefillah ve'eis katoiro mitzvos. Inyan tefillah hu bakasha v'tachna. Like it says, tachanunim yedaber rosh. A poor person speaks in a nebuchdik way. He's begging. He doesn't say, "You owe me." There are some Jewish beggars that they come to you with ganzen toikiv. This what you give me? What am I upset? I'm bnei malachim. It's a kumpmir. So he says, but normally tachnonim yidaber rosh. So the same way when he approaches the Eibishter is also in that type of way. Shakadosh baruch hu yirachim olav v'yimalim mishaloisav av shein eroi lekach ubelashon chazal matnas chinam. We had two parshas ago. Parshas Vaschanon. Rashi explains why does it say Vaschanon. It's a very strange expression. We don't find that expression in Chumash when it comes to asking a request. And when Moshe Rabbeinu asked from the Eibishter to go into Eretz Yisrael, so he said it in the way of Vaschanon of Hashem. The Rashi gives over there two pirushim. One pirush is that even though tzaddik could come ahead and say that, I'm a tzaddik, I earned it, and I demand that my request should be answered. Still in all, tzaddikim do not ask that way. Tzaddikim ask in a way of matnas chinam, and that is in general the approach of davening. The approach of davening is in a way that I am not asking because I deserve. I'm asking just like it's a bakasha. Please give me what I'm asking for. Avlai de eis katoiro mitzvos. Mekabel adam etzrach loy betur tzedakah el al pidin k'mo shuvtachnu b'Torah im b'choist alecho v'es mitzvos tishmeru goymar v'nasati gishmeichem beitam. So there's a quid pro quo. There's a deal. There is a salary over here. I do this, I get that. So tefillah means that I'm asking as a gift. I'm asking Hashem to have rachmanas on me. But when I do Torah mitzvahs to be able to get schusim, like we were talking about before, Torah mitzvahs, a pshat, this is how I earned it. This is the deal that Hashem made with us. In b'chois teleicha, v'nasatik ishmeichem bid. Well, pizem, kish HaKadosh Baruch Hu don es ha'adam. When we're talking about a din, when we're talking about a din Torah, a mishpat that takes place by a person, v'shayklin zechuyes ha'adam v'avinoisav, like the Rambam says. Harei adas nisenes, shekishadonim oisir l'schus, ein zem neirachim v'tzedakah, ela mipnei lefi matzavoi. This is the way when you talk about in a court case. When there's a court case that the Eibishter has with us, so then, like we said before, you see, there's a mishkol, half this, half that, do more mitzvahs. So that will be, the din will come out in the correct way for you. The Rebbe brings down that it's still in all, even though the general idea of teshuvah, that you can make up for something that you did bad, that itself is the rachman of the Eibishter. But here we're talking about the main thing of the din or mishpat that takes place. Therefore, hava aminah shabaseres yemai teshuvah tzarich liis ikra adgasha loisafa v'mitzvos maitzim toivim kedei lischos bedin ve'ein makim lebakashas rachim shiyeh b'tzedakah lefnim mishuras adin. It's a court case. If it's a court case, so I got to do whatever it takes to win the court case. To ask from Hashem tzedakah in a court case doesn't make any sense. A court case decides what's what, what's right, what's wrong. Like we brought before from Rashi at the beginning of Parshas Chanon. So in other words, the Rebbe says, what do you mean that it's a court case? It's a din. I could ask because I'm owed. We said that the tzaddikim, even though they have ma'asim tovim, they don't ask in that way. So he's saying, when you're coming to daven, you shouldn't daven in a way that, listen, we had a deal. You know, let's figure out how much you owe me based on how much work I did for you. No, that's not the way you daven. A tzaddik even, the way he davens in a way of asking for matnas chinam. But here we're talking about, we're making a judgment. The Eibishter is being shoikel. The Eibishter is sitting as a dayan, being shoy for the Yidden. Ma'ashe'en came to shemeduber bedin, sha'kadosh baruch hu shoikel zechias adam chulu, v'shoifet ois alpi maisav, ein makim la'arav v'zavakoshes rachim v'tzedakah chulu. And the Rebbe says an amazing thing. When it comes to Aseres Yemai Teshuvah, we say Hamelech HaKadosh, not a Kela HaKadosh. And we say Hamelech HaMishpat, not Melech Oyev Tzedakah Mishpat. Because Tzedakah doesn't fit in now. Now is a time of doing Din Mishpat. And therefore doing Din Mishpat, so therefore I need to earn what according to Din Mishpat would earn me to get more mitzvahs is the way to go. Because that's going to tilt the scales.
But we ask for tzedakah because most of the people maybe has more averot than mitzvot.
So fine. So you got to add mitzvahs in general. So you got to add a mitzvahs in general, not just tzedakah.
Most people have more mitzvahs. Whatever.
No, the point is, here we're saying that the person looks at himself, the Rambam says, that I'm right in the middle. I'm a beini. Chetzi zakai and chetzi the other. So fine, but I got whatever it is. The point is, it's not about tzedakah versus other mitzvahs. It's about doing any more mitzvahs. Learn more Torah, do other mitzvahs. It doesn't have to be just the idea of laharbais b'tzedakah. That's what we would say if the Rambam would not have added the words laharbais b'tzedakah even before that.
But that sounds relevant more to tzaddikim that has more tzaddikim, meaning like tzaddikim that have more mitzvot than averot.
No, just the opposite. Because we're saying if the person the problem is that he has to look at himself as chetzi zakai and chetzi chayev. Mm-hmm. So what we need to do is we need to tilt the scales. To be able to tilt the scales, by the way, it's not bekamus, that's why it doesn't work. The tilting of the scales, you need to do just more mitzvahs. End of story. It doesn't make a difference if the mitzvah has to do with tzedakah or the mitzvah has to do with something else, with some other mitzvah. It's anything that will tilt the scales, that will add to the pile of mitzvahs that should outweigh the other pile. That's enough.
You're talking about someone that has equal.
That's what the Rambam is talking about.
If it's not becomes, then was you're saying if it's not becomes, what do you need scales for?
Because you gotta add more and more until the Rambam himself says you don't know what's how much one mitzvah is worth or how much one aveda is worth. The Rambam himself says we don't know how to calculate it.
One mitzvah definitely going over.
You're right, but the one mitzvah might not be enough to tilt it. Anyway, Zol Zayin has a maybe it is enough to tilt it. But the point is, okay. But the main point over here is not about how you tilt it, but the point is, why is the Rambam pointing out over here before talking about lasik, ma'asim tovim, v'lasik, v'mitzvahs? Why is the first thing that he says lahar b'is b'tzedakah? Because the Rambam wants to add another component, another kvetch over here, to the idea of this din of mishpat. That it's not just the din of mishpat. Let's see the top of the next page. Rambam, shenoisav ala minig laharbes binyan ischus, tzedakah ma'asim tovim mitzvahs, nagu Yisrael gam lakum balayla v'lispalel b'divrei tachnunim atshayayim. You remember we said the Rambam divides it into two separate things. So there's one section that he talks about the din of mishpat, and then there's the other section that he says that the Yidden are asking as a tefillah. And a tefillah we're asking not because we earned, but the tefillah we're asking because we want the Eibishter to have Rachmanis on us. So the Rambam doesn't want to mix them together. The Rambam separates it. But even the din of mishpat part, even that needs to have something like the tefillah part as well. We need to realize that this itself is part of Hashem's tzedakah. Even the first part. Even the part that we look at ourselves, that the Eibusher judges us, and everything is half and half, and I have to add more mitzvahs to be able to be zoicha. It's also Hashem's tzedakah. The fish ein ma'aser b'nei Adam and Ephraim toifsim makom etzli yisbarach, and like we said in the Bar Mitzvah, ma'imik ma'shenamar im tzadakta matiten loy. So since our avodah has no significance in comparison to the Eibishter, so it's not like the Eibishter really owes us. It's not like if I was working for someone and I helped him out, I did something for him. He needed me to do this work for him. So he owes me money. But what happens if he doesn't need me to do this work for him? But he's just a nice guy, and he said, you know what? He didn't want to embarrass the guy. He wanted to give him tzedakah, but the guy's going to be embarrassed. He says, come, help me schlep over here these boxes, and I'll give you like $20, whatever. So over there, he doesn't really owe him anything. How much more so by the Eibishter? Our avodah is in a way that it has no tfisas makim, it has no significance, no value by the Eibishter. If not for the Eibishter wanting it to have value. He chose it, but it's not be'etzem that it has a tfisas makim by it. Not only that, but shegam asiyas ma'asim tov ma'idei adam mi bekoiche she'akadosh baruch hu. How do I even have the capability to do mitzvahs? The very koyach that I'm able to wrap my hand in film, that very koyach that I have to be able to do any other mitzvah, is because the Eibishter gave me the koyach to do it. So it's really the Eibishter putting on film. Who's doing it? That whoever came before me, I'll pay him. What does that mean? That means no one came before the Eibishter. The only reason we exist is only because the Eibishter made us exist. So therefore, I don't owe anybody anything because I made you l'chatchila and I gave you the koyach to do the mitzvahs l'chatchila. V'lechein zeh guf shakadosh baruch hu mashpol asatzim keviyach v'don es ha'adam u'machshiv es ma'asav ha'tovim l'zchusay l'zakoysim shum kach bedin harei zeh chesed v'tzedakah mi'itei yisbarach. He needs, even for those things that he's going to get bedinu mishpat, even for those things that he's going to get because he's learning Torah, because he's doing mitzvahs, even that itself has to be in a way of tachnonim. ולכן חילק הרמב"ם מנהגים אלו הבייס בובס, כי הם שני עניונים נפרדים בפעולתם של ישראל לזכות בדין. בבא א' הם הדברים שבני ישראל עושים כדי להכריע כף המאזניים. ובבא בייס, the second section is התפילה בתחנונים. Why? Because it's to tell you that even the first part needs tefillah v'tachnonim. Ki b'shvil zeh gufe shedvarim eli achriel kaf schus. The first part, how can they be machriel kaf schus? Zekukim l'rachma HaKadosh Baruch Hu kanal. And then the Rebbe says a very interesting thing. There's an interesting diuk haloshon in the Rambam. V'yeshloimer shezol gam atam l'shinui haloshon b'shtei ababas. B'baba aleph it says, Nagu kol beis Yisrael to add in stakim, maisim toivim, and to be oiskim mitzvahs. But Baba beis nagu kulam to get up by night and to say slichas. The mashma ktsas, the difference between these two lashonis, the inyan habeis masher nagu lakum chulu yan haga pshuta lekulam yoiser me inyan aleph. It's like a given. It's like without even thinking, like almost. No, the other way. And then he says about tzaddikim. Or not tzaddikim, those that added. They also need this noigim lahis bakashas rachim divrei tachnonim ki gam heim tzrichim leida ulahargish zchusam bedin he begathered tzidkasich al Kadosh Baruch Hu shetzrichim bakashas tachnonim alza. They shouldn't think I could tap myself on the back. I could say I did a good job. I added so many mitzvahs this Aseres Yemai Teshuvah. I added so many mitzvahs this Elul, and therefore I'm owed. I should get the ksivah chsima toivah. So the Rebbe says no. Our attitude has to be even then that it's only because of Hashem's chesed and rachmim, and therefore I have to add in tachnunim and tefillas and extra davening and so on to realize and to do it out of a bakashas rachmim, not out of a demand that I'm owed.
And the tzaddik has that. He knows that thing.
Even the tzaddik,
he has to. The same
yeah,
way
yeah.
you're saying.
The tzaddik also, right?
That's exactly
Yeah.
it.
Ubezei yesh levar. Now we're going to get to the words of lahar boys. Ubezei yesh levar gam mashoytzi Rambam bava aleph ulahar boys b'tzedakah min haklal v'igdimu l'shnara inyonim. Now we're going to get back to that previous question. Why does he take adding in tzedakah? Add more mitzvahs. This includes tzedakah also. Ki b'ribui hatzedakah. Not just giving tzedakah the way you're supposed to, but like we said, more than meiser, more than choimish. Mudgish gam kein sha'adam margish etzarech liskois bedin rak machmas etkasish la'kadosh baruch hu. Shalachein marbe b'tzedakah kadei sha'kadosh baruch hu yisnaig yimai gam kein ba'ofen shal tzedakah midah keneged midah. Adding in tzedakah causes the Eibishter's attitude towards him not to be just quid pro quo, not just to be in a way of din, because I realize that din is not enough. I realize I need to have more than that. How do I bring it into fruition? Not just that I'm davening and I'm adding in slichas, but by adding in tzedakah and going more than the shura sadin, more than what I'm obligated to give in tzedakah. So that's ma'ordered by the Eibishter as well. Midah connected midah to do tzedakah. K'loim zeh sh'adam margish kol ma shezoichem al ma'ila v'deged tzedakah matnas chinam tzarich lizbati loidak b'tfilasai. Fine, I'm davening a lot more in Elul. I'm davening a lot more in Aseres Yemai Teshuvah. Elagam b'maisav shekavanosam atoyas hakaf meznaim shaladin l'toiva al piadin. Also in those actions, gam b'hem tzarich lahadgish zeu lefnim mishuras adin klapim ma'ila. Now here the Rebbe is going to bring in a very interesting thing. We always know this type of contrast between what we learn in Chassidus the whole time about what's the theme of Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah is about Achdoras HaMelech, coronating the king. And that's why the majority of davening, if we look in the Rosh Hashanah davening, it's all about V'simla, Yitrikaran HaMelech HaKadosh. It's all about the idea of Meluch. Yeah, here and there it talks about Din and Masana Toikif, whatever, but the main emphasis is Meluch. But in Welt, it's a lot about Yom Adin, the day of judgment, the day of judgment. The Rebbe over here is going to bring it together based on what we just now said, the two approaches of, is it our relation with the Eibishter in a way of a reward for what we did, what we earned, or is it in a way that the Eibishter is going to give us tzedakah, and this is going to reflect in the two approaches, which both of them are right. The Rebbe is not negating the Yom Adin. It's open. It's also in the Siddur. But he's going to show how both of them work together. Let's see it inside. Valpi pnimis yanim ba'gedoras mehusa avodah shoroshon amar zal she'amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu imru lefanai beroshon malchios zechroines v'shoifres. Why? Malchios kedei shtamlichuni aleichem, zechroines kedei sheyal zechanechem lefanai l'toiva ubameh. How does this happen? B'shoifres. Valpiza, based on this Maimer Chazal, so the whole Chassidus emphasizes this bar become Mekoymes she'ikir avodas Rosh Hashanah hiachtaros HaKadosh Baruch Hu lemelech HaYisrael shtam nechuni aleichem. And when the Eibishter is a melech upon us, so then it's also meloich haloilam kuloi v'ayidei zeh lemelech haloilam kuloi. That's why it says Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu, and then melech oilam. First is upon us, and then through us on the entire world. And the Rebbe makes in footnote 41, he points out a very interesting thing. The Ram explains, I think, 7 different reasons or 10 different reasons for the mitzvah of Tkiyas Shofar. Why we blow Shofar on Rosh Hashanah? What does about Rosh Hashanah have to do with Tkiyas Shofar? So it's interesting. He also explains about something about, it reminds him of the Yemei Hadin, it reminds him, it's like awakening him, it's reminding him for tshuva, whatever. But the first thing that Avad Ram says, the first explanation is the Chassidish explanation. That what? Since it's we're mamlich aleinu the Eibishter on Rosh Hashanah, and by when you machter the Melech, when you make him a king, you blow in trumpets. So that's the first one, not in Chassidus, but Avad Ram. So how does it work? Which is it? Is it Yemei Adin, or is it the idea of Hachtaras HaMelech? So the Rebbe says, Ki travayu isnu bei. Mitzad HaKadosh Baruch Hu amitis teichlim shel yomim eila hu shemachtirim oisel HaMelech. Interesting way how he puts it. There's from Hashem's perspective and our perspective. Davar hanegea be'ikir LaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's what he needs. It's an amazing thing the way the Rebbe takes this Maimer Chazal. It's so many times Chassidus and the Rebbe Sichos and Amorim, and throughout Chassidus has brought down this Maimer Chazal. But the Rebbe says, when we look at this Maimer Chazal, it's a very unusual type of expression. The Chazal should say, you know what? It's a mitzvah on Rosh Hashanah to say Psukim Malchia, so we make the Eibishter as a king. It doesn't say that in the Gemara. The Gemara says that the Eibishter, it doesn't say this by other mitzvahs usually, the Eibishter addresses the Yidden and tells Yidden, Imru lefanai Malchias kedei shtam nechunei aleichem. The Eibishter is talking to us. He's asking of us. He's addressing us. And he's telling us, say Psukim Malchia, so you should make me a king. This is something that the Eibishter needs. The kingship of the Eibishter is asking us to help him out with. In other words, Kifi HaKadosh Baruch Hu kiviyachol hishpil es atzmei li'es yoshev v'don kol boya olam hareyam yemei dinu mishpat sheshoikel in zchuyas ha'adam v'avanosav. So now he's going to explain this in the inyanim that we just now said. The reason for the din, like we said before, for the judgment, you have to make sure to add more mitzvahs, so therefore you come out on the good side. If the Eibishter is not yet a king, so who is he judging? He has no connection with us. So even before that, Hareza al yedei shenirgesh etzel ha'am bitula mashalim. Throughout Chassidus it explains that Hachtaras HaMelech comes about when the Am is totally bottled and they bow down the Pishut Yadayim V'Raglayim. Only then can you have the king become a king. If you're Bittul Gamri, you're not going to be saying anything like, you owe me. I was Mekayim B'Chokoisai Talechu, Sakumt mir, Rasati Gishmecha Bitam. שגם כאשר מצד חשבון הזכויות והעוונס האדם צדיק וזוכה בדין ופשיטה שעשה תשובה כדבוי מכל מקום הרי הוא מספל בתחנונים. And not just does he daven ויסיינים הזו, he מרבה בצדקה בכדי לזכויס לצדקוסי של הקדוש ברוך הוא. Why? Not just because he wants to have the Eibishter to go לפנים משורת הדין, but because we want the Tamlichuni Aleichem. To have Tamlichuni Aleichem, we cannot do this by going ahead and saying, I'm owed. That's what it brings about. So he goes on further, when the king is in the field, you also need this, at least in a smaller way. Taken not in the way that's on Rosh and Aseres Yemai Teshuvah. Gam ba'avodah the chodesh harachim v'aslichas chodesh El, shegam bo yeshnam beis in yonim Elul that we just now said takes place on Rosh Hashanah and Aseres Yemai Teshuvah and so on. Mitzad echad hareu chodesh harachim v'aslich ad sheyesh mi shemarbim loy meslichas tachnonim resh chodesh El v'Elul. By Svardim, they say a whole month of El they get up early to say slichas. Ubedugmas divrei Rambam Aseres Yemai Teshuvah that the Rambam said that the nagu kulam laharba is betchinas to get up, betachnunim to get up early and to say slichas. Umeidach yisas and negeya liskais badin. The fact that they're doing so. Kemudish b'lashon hatur v'chol ha'moisav levakish rachmim zechus huloi. So the Rebbe says it's seemingly contradictory. The lechura reis etarte the sasri. The bakashas rachamim toichna sha'af she'ein lo zechiyos mevakish HaKadosh Baruch Hu yirachem olav. That's what it means to ask rachamim. Shua heipach the schus uloi. That's not meaning that he has a schus. Al shaderech lizkos biyamim elu hi ha'yidei she'nirgesh etzlei she'tamid zakuk levakish rachamim HaKadosh Baruch Hu she'yitn lo tzedakah matnas chinam. V'chein li'idach yisa she'gam bezeh שמוסיפים בעבודה דתשובה מייסים טובים כמו שנסבר כמה פעמים הרמז הזה שבראש טייבס אלול נרמזים כל השלושה עמודים דתורה עבודה גמילס חסדים. The Rebbe says there's one Rosh Tevis it says in Eliyadei v'samti lach concerning Arim Miklat, and we know it says Divrei Torah Koltim, that Divrei Torah function like Arim Miklat as well. So it says by Arim Miklat in Eliyadei v'samti lach makom lanas shama, so that's being maramez on Torah. And then it says Anilu doidi v'doidi li. That's the idea of avoda. It's the idea of ava. The ava and the davening to the Eibishter. You're having this loving relationship with the Eibishter. And then there's the level of Ish l're'eu matanis la'avyonim is also Rosh Tevis El that hints on the idea of tzedakah gmils chasadim, the third kav. V'chein avodas hatshuvah, it says es levavcha v'es levav. That it says umal Hashem elekecha es levavcha v'es levav zarecha. So es levavcha v'es levav is Rosh Tevis Elul. That's talking about the milah of the person's heart. That's talking about shuvah. And then it says v'inin agula because it says ashir el Hashem v'yemru leimer. That it's talking about in Oz Yashir, and we know Oz Yashir is Maramas on the Geulah, like it says Oz Yashir, then they will sing. That will be when Mashiach comes. So these are 5 Rosh Tevis of El. So Bezeh Gufe, Tzricha Lias Hagdama de la Harbes B'Tzedakah, like we said before. Kemerumas Kanal Sif Aleph Ba'Tziruf T'Shem Havai Sh'Chodesh El HaYotzim M'Soife Tevis B'Tzedakah Tiyalanu Ki. Vayidei anhag zu zoiche kol echad li'kase v'li'chasem v'sifren shel tzadikim gemurim v'ad shalifnei Rosh Hashanah yoidim shem zoichim bedin l'ksiva v'chsima toiva l'shana toiva v'suka b'toiva nira v'anigla.
Amen.